Hello and welcome. This is Into the Pages, where we go into our favorite books. And today we are continuing The Aeronauts Windlass
by Jim Butcher.
by Jimothy Butcher. Today we're going to be continuing, starting with chapter 20.
I really like Jim Butcher's writing style. I think started to enjoy it when we were reading through the Dresden Files. Because, it's like fast-paced, a lot of action. And like each book is like a relatively short period of time. And there's like some insane deadline that has to be met, and it's just like craziness.
Yeah, like every single one of those books is like you go in between book 4 and 5 or something, for example. It's like in between those books, like 6 months or a year passed, but then each of those books only lasted like a few days or a week or something.
This book is definitely no different. It's just we're given like a brief. These are the characters. These are the stories. Under attack.
Yeah, seriously.
And I noticed that style that Jim Butcher does. I think it's kind of subtle, and so I'm not going to complain about it. But if you ever read like all of his Dresden File books back to back to back to back, you realize that they're all very, very similar.
Yeah,
it's like it's kind of calm at first. Something crazy happens. Harry's injured. He gets no sleep, and he's like at the final battle. He's like barely alive, can barely walk.
Yeah, by the time the final battle comes around, he's already been beat up a few more times. His magic reserves are all used up.
Yeah, and he like barely scrapes by. This book's no different.
That is interesting, because I don't think the Codex Alera series wasn't like that.
I don't think it was. I think that was a more traditional book. Still really good.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll cover that on this podcast.
I think maybe the Harry Dresden Files. I always say Harry Dresden. Just the Dresden Files is probably a good recommendation for some people who are like fantasy, because I don't know if they're scared or they're scared of like the Wheel of Time or the Stormlight Archive, because they're such fat books.
Yeah,
And
no,
like
I totally agree.
Some people who are not fans and people who are fans, I've heard will kind of like complain a little bit about the Wheel of Time, because like it's so descriptive, and like you get such a crazy in-depth description that people are just like, this is boring.
Yeah, it's like very descriptive, and like it's an omnipresent narrative, so you constantly just know the thoughts of the character, and so it's like I'm going off on a tangent now, but I don't even give a crap.
Do it.
Because I think the reason why the descriptiveness works for Robert Jordan, while for me it didn't work for like Tolkien, say, or other similar authors, because I think there's a difference between like saying like just stepping away from the character, stepping away from the story, and describing the scenery, I think is what is boring. And I would agree with people that is boring. What I like that Robert Jordan does is he describes the scenery through the perspective of the character. So like they'll walk in, and that the character will notice aspects of the scene. The character, sometimes even memories will come back, like, oh, that looks like this from my house, or that looks like this from the inn. And then so you get the scene through the eyes of the character, and so it makes it easier to get into it and feel like I'm there, rather than being like, this is the story, stop, and they're in there, and they're here, okay, action. It feels more natural, it feels more like flowing through. But there's still a lot. I'm not saying that it totally gets rid of it. I'm not saying that it eliminates all boredom, but that's what made it work.
Yeah. But this kind of goes, you and I don't know if we're just weird or we're just some of the few, but like that's the exact kind of stuff that you and I get in a book and we're like, this book is great.
Yeah.
Like I definitely love the Dresden Files, but if they were like 100, 200 pages longer, because he took longer to tell a story, or he put a little more description in there, then I wouldn't bat an eye.
And I think his descriptiveness relies heavily on Chicago, I would say, because he'll just say, I'm at this place in Chicago.
Yeah, so it's almost like if you want to know what that place is, just get on Google and be like, what is this place?
Yeah, I think that works really well. I actually
I agree.
really enjoyed that, because it makes it seem like you're like there. You're like, oh yeah, that Chicago.
Yeah, and I mean, like, even I've never looked up once where he was at or anything about Chicago, but I still like, I've seen many pictures and videos and stuff with Chicago, and I know enough that I'm like, oh yeah, he's in a city, whatever. But I mean, I guess it is different with the fantasy world, because the Wheel of Time is not a real place. Surprise. And so you can go into describing everything.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, going back to your previous point, I definitely think that the Dresden Files and books like it are a very good starting point for people new to fantasy, or maybe not even new to fantasy, but new to non-YA fantasy books.
Yeah. That's a good fantasy book, adult book, adult fantasy for maybe a little more casual readers, because with that one there's good plot and there's good story, but it's nowhere near as complicated as like Stormlight or The Wheel of Time, where you got to keep track of like 10 different characters and
it's fast paced,
it's super fast paced.
Keeps your attention, because that worked a lot for my wife and I, because we like to listen to books on audio together, and we did a lot of YA type books, and then we also tried The Way of Kings, which she liked, and then we tried and we got halfway through that series, and then she was kind of like, I don't want to read these big books anymore.
Even listening to it was still a little too taxing.
Yeah, because it's just like, she was like, it's too boring. And I'm like, well, it's character setup, and she's like, eh.
Yeah.
But then we read Dresden Files, and she loves Dresden Files. She was like, when I introduced it to her, she would be like, not want us to, like, next chapter. Like, are we going to listen to it? Let's listen to it. And I think it's because it has like that good mystery, it has good action, it's fast paced, and it's well written. And from there, then we were able to get into like Mistborn, and now we're reading Mistborn Era 2, and so.
Oh, are you? I didn't know that.
Yes. So
nice.
I think books kind of like that can be the gateway drug of the fantasy novels.
Yes. I wonder if that's why we're that way. You and I probably read a lot more fast-paced stuff growing up. I don't remember reading anything huge, because The Wheel of Time was probably the biggest thing we've ever had read. I guess we read the Sword of Truth.
When I was a kid, I didn't even finish Wheel of Time. I got to like book 8 and like stopped, and then
you had to start
over. I was
over.
like in junior high, and then like at the end of high school, I finally started over this series and actually read it all the way through.
I still think that you and I are probably just like in a special category of fantasy readers, where like those books may be 1,200 pages, but we will eat it up like it's 300, 500 pages.
The thicker the book, I remember even now I'm thinking like if I go to like Barnes & Noble or the library and I have no idea what I'm looking for, I'm just looking for something new. The things I look for are, I look for an interesting cover, and I look for a fat book.
Right.
And so, like, the fatter the better. So I'm like, good. This is going to be like a story. This is going to be like something.
I swear, the older I get, and the more of these big fat books that I read, when you find a 500-page book that's like, you still like it, and it's near like, it's not bad or anything, but you're like, it's only 500 pages. And you're just like, that just means the story you like is going to be that much shorter. And you're going to have to start all over with finding a new book you want to read.
Yeah,
it's like, I don't want to, I'm not ready. We commit too much. We don't want the commitment to end.
Yeah, no. So maybe that's just us being weird. But
yes,
there are very popular books that are thick. So
yeah, there are.
If you're one of those people that likes the longer the book, the better, let us know.
Yes, let us know. Let us know what fat boys we should be reading.
Yes, join us. So with all of that kind of background, that's kind of the setting that we have for this book. This is definitely a faster-paced book. I wouldn't classify it as YA, based on things we've seen, but I think it's definitely just like we're talking about Dresden Files. This is just a good book if you know someone who likes to read but has kind of stayed away from adult fiction. I recommend this book.
Definitely.
It's definitely adult. It's definitely got heavier themes, and I don't think it'll be good. Yeah, it's not some 12-year-old that saves the world.
And I think this actually is a good segue as showing how fast-paced this book is. It's like after the first attack by the Aurorans on the Spire Arc, we have Bridget, Gwen, and Benedict who fight off a group of the Aurorans for a little bit. And they are immediately at the next chapter, after everything is quieted down, they're already made into regular guards. Like they just
because it's like okay, we're in war now. You're no longer trainers. Like we need everybody.
So there was no time wasted in like writing about them getting trained more. It was just kind of mentioned in passing that Gwen has been in training for a few weeks. I assume Bridget was too, but
yeah, I think they were all in the same class. I think Benedict's the only one that actually has.
Yeah, he's been
more
there
experience
before Gwen and Bridget never came in.
Yeah, so after the fight, the Spire Arc, Albion, who again is kind of like the king of Spire Albion, but they also have like a council of nobles, so he doesn't have like absolute power, but I think he does kind of take more power because it's wartime. So it's kind of an interesting setup. We don't get a lot of it, but I might play more into later. But
yeah, I wonder. I was waiting to see if that was the case, or if he just had enough power still to send like Grimm and his men, and then a few lesser guards.
This is like a super top secret mission because he's like, don't tell anybody, like don't even let anyone know what you're doing. And their mission that they're given. So he's already at this point. He's already talks to Grimm, and I think we talked about that in our last episode. Is he says, if you do this top secret mission for me, I'll completely pay to 100% repair your ship.
Right.
And then he's like, you need to transport some people. And the people they're going to transport are the two, I almost said Furukumis. Etherealists. Folly and Ferris and Gwen, Benedict, and Bridget. And those are the 5 people that he sends. And their mission is, at first you're kind of like, why is he sending these completely inexperienced people to do such an important thing?
Yeah, I mean, Ferris seems like the only experienced one.
Yeah, Ferris I think is totally makes sense. Grimm makes sense. You know, he's a seasoned battle commander, and he has like experience with the fleet. He's been a captain of his own ship for years, and he just has all this experience. So it makes sense that part. But then the 3, Gwen, Bridget, and Benedict. But then it turns out, I think the Spire Albin's even like super honest. He's like, I'm sending you guys because you're low profile, and he doesn't outright say expendable, but it's kind of like he kind of says it in a way like you're not overtly important to our larger efforts, and so I can spare you. You won't catch attention because you're not super important. That I'm not there. People aren't going to like be like, oh, what are you doing? Which
is funny to me because I forgot about that, and I think that's all they did when they get to have a landing. I swear, like no matter where they go, it's like, oh, there's some trouble. It doesn't help that Gwen's there. She's not much for the spy game, and she's not much to me. She's not tactful. She's more like, give me what you want, or I'm going to blow your face off.
She does extremely stupid things. So they accept the mission, of course, and they go to Habel. So they're in Habel Morning. They go to Habel Landing, and a couple things I want to talk about before we get to the next part of the story. But like, I've been having a hard time like imagining how massive these spires are, because when they go to Spire Landing, like Bridget says that she's never left Habel Morning, and then Benedict's like, yeah, 70% of people never leave their Habel. I'm like, these places this spire must be way bigger than I was imagining. Like big enough that like they're like each Habel is essentially a city.
Yeah,
and
probably.
Because if people don't leave, that means they don't need to leave, which means that every Habel has what they need, or at least can quickly get it from other Habels. And so I'm like,
I definitely think that is a harder part to picture, because not only you got the spire, but then whatever they added onto it, they've got to be just huge. And I wonder if it's also because it's not necessarily that it's so big that they just don't go everywhere, but it's more like, I mean, you think of like an apocalypse, like they don't go other places because it's not really feasible. Well, this is not really like an apocalypse, I guess.
Well, kind of, because they always talk about, like, we don't know much about it, but they're like, oh, surface creatures bad. Like if you go down there, like you got to be crazy. And so like these spires were obviously created to escape the surface. So
yeah, so I guess it is like, because what I'm thinking is
maybe
like,
not apocalypse, just like extremely hostile or something.
Yeah, because you think of like The Last of Us, for example. Like the reason that they're all concentrated in one area and don't really go anywhere is because it's dangerous. But I mean, like up in the spire, you're safe from the surface creatures relatively.
Yeah. I was kind of picturing it in the sense like, yeah, I live in LA. And I've never in my entire life been outside of LA, and right now I'm going on a secret mission to San Diego. So I was like, okay, I know that's about a few hours away.
Yeah, because it didn't take them that long to get there.
No, they were like there. Like they literally got on Grimm's ship, floated down, and they were there.
Yeah, okay.
Or that's another thing. Are there stairs?
I don't know.
I don't remember if they talked about there being
They've
stairs.
definitely not.
I wonder if
have they even talked about any sort of thing besides the ships they get up and down?
Not that I remember.
There must be elevators or something.
So maybe that's part of why people never leave, because like you have to charter a ship.
Yeah, like that's kind of what I was kind of going to get at, is maybe it's just not feasible cost-wise. Like Bridget definitely is poor enough where I wouldn't be surprised she doesn't have the money to like go travel around the spire. And also she's just scared of the world, I guess.
Yeah. But anyway, they make it to the Spire Landing. Their mission: find the Albions and stop them. Essentially,
was it to stop them? I couldn't remember. It was to stop them or to just like find them.
It might have been just to find them and figure out what the crap they're doing. I don't think they quite know the scope of what they're getting into or what exactly is going on. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
But Gwen, of course, is a complete idiot. Gwen is just
sometimes it seems like she makes decisions that are like saves everyone. But at other times it's just like you are making it's surprising that it's not harder.
There's like this one part I wanted to read because she pushes Creedy Because so she gets on the ship and she already knows that Grimm has been like labeled like a coward, and she believes it. She's like hook, line, and sinker. Like, yeah, this guy's a coward. Like, why is he our captain?
I actually hate that
and
in chapter 20 where she's like talking about like, I was not saved by a disgraced captain. Absolutely not. There's no way. It's like she's not grateful at all, and she's trying to like make all these excuses and like he didn't really do it. It was me, or it was this person, or whatever.
Yeah, and then she's kind of doing that to Creedy. We find out she's intentionally trying to antagonize him, and when Grimm confronts her about it, she's like, I often find that when people are tired and you push them, like their true selves will come out. Okay, so to kind of give a little more context in this quote, Gwen is talking to Creedy about Grimm's past, and she's kind of like, she's not saying anything. No, anyway, it's all good. So she says, have I said anything that's untrue, Commander? And then Creedy says, you have said nothing untrue. You have also said nothing that is complete. There is more to the world than what a review board publishes about an officer or aeronaut, Miss Lancaster. Guard your tongue. I just love that part. Like, he's like establishing with no uncertain terms that like she crossed the line, no more. Which I like.
Which is like, you have to, she feels like such a child. Like, okay, maybe you can look at her and be like, oh, that's a very good point. That you want to get to know someone, get them tired, and then, poke at them. And
but she's like intentionally doing it as like a manipulation tactic.
Yeah, she's not. I don't know. It's not a way to, like, what she's doing is a good way to make enemies. Even if like she's like, her and Creedy are not going to be like trying to kill each other, but they certainly are far from like friends and like allies. Like, he's going to help her out because Grimm is going to say so. But
and I really like, I think I've said this before, but I like how Butcher is portraying Gwen, because she has that stereotypical fantasy noblewoman that's arrogant, abrasive, manipulative, really smart, really attractive. And in most books I've read, when you combine those things into an educated noblewoman, she usually gets what she wants. Mm-hmm. You especially see that. I'm thinking, I always bring up Wheel of Time, but there's a lot of noblewomen in there, like Elaine, for example, that when she turns on this act, a lot of people are like, oh, wow, like, okay, yeah, do whatever you want, and like adore her and roll over and take it. There are people that don't, but I like that almost no one that Gwen does this to takes it.
Yes.
So far, almost everyone that she's confronted in this way has been like, back off, like, screw you, which I've loved. And it's funny because every time she's got it, she's just like, like, she's like, or not even that, like, she doesn't even register it. She's just like, doesn't, I don't know.
Because she doesn't even stop. Because like, even before she was like antagonizing Creedy, she was on the landing wherever the heck they were leaving from in Half Morning, and she was, or I don't remember where it was, if it was landing or morning, but she was like antagonizing the guards too, trying to bully them. Yeah, it's like, what the F is your problem, woman? So, like, I do not like when young people who are inexperienced and just blockheaded like she is try to, like, they think they're in command. Like, in this scenario, she is not in command. Ferris is, and maybe Benedict, and definitely Grimm, but she is not. She's the one who needs to be taking orders. And Ferris was like, hey, go talk to those guards and make sure everything's all square. Then like, okay, fine, go talk to them. But why did she go over there like a butt crack?
She's a butt crack, that's why. Yeah, we do get a tiny bit more insight into what may have happened with Grimm, because she brings up the report. She's like, she said she can't get the official reports, but basically we get a little glimpse, which was something happened on their ship. The captain died, and when they came back, and it turns out Bayard, Grimm, and Rook were all lieutenants together. So that kind of explains their background a little bit. Yeah. But
and I think it was like, exactly, it was this whole impressive thing too, where they like, the captain died, and these 3 young lieutenants were able to bring the ship back. We
get a little chapter 23 is kind of short. I think the only thing really worth mentioning here is Bayard is trying to he comes to Grimm and he's trying to convince, he's like, hey, just, like, it's war. You could probably get a commission back in the fleet, and I have a ship ready for you. But Grimm's kind of like, no. And so you can see, though, even though it's been like several years, and I think Grimm's an honorable man. I think he's a good guy, and he's still, I guess, hurt maybe about what happened, or
yeah, because like,
still like,
we still haven't learned what it is that happened
Yeah.
100%. We get little bits.
And it seems
here
more and
there.
more obvious that he was just completely shafted.
Yeah, like he didn't actually do something wrong, but he had to take the fall for something. And
Yeah, because all it's explained so far is there was 3 lieutenants, a dead captain. One of the lieutenants got dishonorably just discharged, and the other 2 lieutenants got promoted to lieutenant commander. And so we're like, what happened?
Yeah, but I do remember that he did tell Bayard, like, if you get me in writing, like a full pardon and an apology or something, then he would go back and fight for the fleet. But unless he got that, he wasn't going. Yeah. And Bayard's like, I'll be back.
Yeah. And it seems like they have like a relationship because Grimm even says, like, say hi to your wife for me.
Yeah. They 100%
like,
seem like friends.
Like, you should come over for dinner. And he's like, okay, I will. So they definitely they're close and have a good relationship. So it's not just like they haven't talked since whatever happened. Like they've stayed in close touch and close contact. And so again, it's like, okay, obviously if you're a lieutenant with someone, they get dishonorably discharged, you get promoted, but you keep a close relationship with them where like you have dinner with them and they know your wife intimately, and like it's like obviously okay. There's just just more and more. I think we already knew this because you can tell because we've had Grimm's perspective that Grimm's not a bad guy. He's a good honorable man. But then we get into stinking Gwen. It's getting so sick of Gwen. They get to Habel Landing and they're looking for a hotel and they're being tailed by footpads. They've been marked to be robbed. And Gwen, even though she dang well knows they're supposed to be on a secret mission, they're not supposed to draw any attention to themselves, turns around and shoots her gauntlet in a crowded street and yells, no one's going to mess with us. All these crimes, no one messes with us. We don't touch us. So like, and then even Benedict's like, okay, like this place is run by crime lords and you just made them all mad. So I'm like, okay, Gwen, this is no longer a secret mission. Freaking everyone knows you're here.
Yeah.
Stupid Gwen.
And I mean, like, she didn't really give away what they were doing, but she drew all the attention to them.
Now
she scared off.
Now they have attention to them. They're not going to. They're.
Yeah, and we have yet to see if like the crime lords in this are like the typical crime lord you would see in other stories, movies, and stuff. Where like, are they going to be like, no, this is a threat against our territory. That's absolutely not going to happen. We're going to send a message to these people that we are in charge here. Yeah. And I've been waiting for something to happen with like some footpads to show up and just like try to give Gwen a beating or something. Or they're going to show up at the wrong time or something. That's what I'm expecting.
I hope so. I want Gwen to get stabbed right in the butt. I don't hate her so much that I want her to die, but I'm still just like...
I hate her enough that I want her to be locked up and gagged.
Locked up again. But anyway, they kind of decide based on that they're not really going to be able to find the best inn. And then Benedict says he has a connection with what's called the Temple of the Way, which is essentially like, I kind of pictured them like Shaolin monks. Like it's like a religion of the path, the way. Doesn't really get into much detail what that means, but they're like really into hand-to-hand combat. Like even in order to gain entry into the temple, Benedict has to spar his old tutor.
Oh yeah, that's right. That was funny.
And it's like this kung fu karate blur of motion, and he obviously gets beaten. But so yeah, they go to the temple. Gwen again tries to be all smart and ridiculous with the monk, but the monk's kind of like a pacifist, and he's really good at not being sucked into what Gwen does. So even though she's like trying to ridicule his religion, trying to make him feel stupid or make herself come across as smart. But his name's Brother Vincent. It's kind of just like he handles her pretty good. I didn't pull any specific quotes, but just the whole interaction where it's obvious that she's trying to get a rise out of him, and he doesn't even do anything. He handles it so well that Gwen actually just like stops. So, and then they ask for shelter, but Brother Vincent's like, no, in all things, the Temple of the Way is neutral. And they're like, but they're attacking Spire Albion. And he says, we have temples on Spire Aurora. Like, we're on no one's side here. But he recommends an inn, which is where they end up going.
The good old Black Horse Inn, where trouble of all sorts happens.
Yes. Gwen once again proves her arrogance and naivety, I think, in a lot of ways. They get there and the inn is full. But she's like, are you sure? And like gives him, the innkeeper, like a ton of money. Like, it doesn't say how much, but like shocks Benedict. He's like, holy crap. And basically the innkeeper kicks someone out of the room and gives it to Gwen and Gwen and the party. Ferris is kind of funny in this chapter because they're looking for someone. They're trying to figure out who they're looking for. And Ferris says he needs to get drunk to change his perspective so that he can find someone. It's like, all right. They all separate. Gwen and Benedict and Ferris stay at the inn. Bridget, Roll, and Folly go to talk to the cat clan that is in Habel Landing to try to get some information on if they've seen.
I feel the same way about these cats that Raoul does about humans. Like, they don't make any sense to me. Like when they go talk to the cat clans there.
I know that their little duel that they have is pretty funny.
Yeah.
Totally seems like a cat thing. Because they I don't remember how they find the cat. They're just walking or something, and then all of a sudden a cat shows up, and how they have to both show
indifference, uncaring. They just have to pretend they don't give a crap.
Who can ignore the other one the longest? And they're there for hours. Like I remember Benedict, and it's kind of funny because not Benedict, Bridget is with Folly, and Folly's kind of like, "What's going on?" And Bridget's like, "We just gotta wait." And then 3 hours passes, and then they're like, "Oh, we still gotta wait." And then like even more time, like Folly falls asleep, Bridget's like bored or something.
Yes, seriously.
But they do take this opportunity. There's a little bit of character development here. I think between two outcasts, Bridget, because she's. I don't know if Bridget's an outcast. Maybe she's just not. I don't know how to describe it. But Folly and Bridget start.
Yes.
Because instead of like being weirded out by Folly, because Folly's weird thing, because every etherealist is like crazy in some way. And Folly's way is she can't directly talk to someone. She has to talk to her crystals. When she's talking to her crystals, she's actually talking to whoever she's trying to talk to. And Bridget's kind of just like. Oh.
She's almost talking to other people in like third person.
Yeah. And Bridget just kind of accepts it and doesn't think that she's all weird or try to stay away from her. So there's kind of like a lot of setup. It's kind of flickering back and forth between these two things. Like we get a little bit of this, we get a little bit of that, we get a little bit of this. I guess just some important call outs. There's a discussion between Ferris, Benedict, and Gwen kind of about ether and how when you use a gauntlet, like it feels different for everyone. And Gwen's like, to me it feels cold. And Benedict's like, to me it feels like my arm tingling. And Gwen like refuses to accept that. She's like, no, it feels cold. And then Ferris is like, yeah, when you first felt it, your body was like, what the crap is this? It's cold. But it's different for everyone. And she's like, no, it's not. It's cold. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Bridget. Or Gwen. But anyways, that pretty much took us through like 28, 29, and 30.
There was something that I'm kind of expecting that just goes a little bit farther here. After she talks to the innkeeper and like gets her way, up to this point so far, it's like it doesn't matter what's happening. She gets her way. She either just has to throw her money all around to get her way, or she just blasts her gauntlet in people's faces to get her way. And I just think that at the most crucial moment, something's going to happen, and Bridget is going to be in a position that she cannot threaten, bribe, or blast her way out of, and she's going to have to completely do a 180 on herself and figure out a new way to get out of, or to help in some situation.
Hopefully.
Or she's just going to get worse and get herself killed.
Fingers crossed. Jumping into 31. Grimm apparently, it's not really clear. I'm assuming this is his ex-wife. But I don't remember if it actually said ex-wife, but they've had some sort of relationship, and I'm assuming they used to be married or at least very close. But she's the captain of another ship called Mist Shark, and her name's Ransom. Everyone's very suspicious of her. Like when they come, like they like search her and take all her weapons, everything, and Grimm even like hides all his good alcohol. And apparently they had some sort of race or something a while ago that they're all bitter about. She's like, I won the race. And he's like, you freaking cheated.
Yeah, typical.
And she offers Grimm a job, which comes off to Grimm and to the reader as very like, what?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. No sense at all. But Grimm obviously does it. And the important part of here is Grimm then suspects that the Mist Shark is the Aurorans' getaway ship. Because he's kind of like reasons. He's like, why the heck else is she here? And like,
yeah, wasn't it like she is not really wanting him to deliver something for her. She wants to get him out of the way.
Yeah. And then we get a brief view into the villains. A verminositor had stumbled upon the Auroran encampment.
That poor SOB.
And there's a lot of them. I think there's like a whole battalion or group. So there's like, I think there's like 1,000 Aurorans. So like
Wasn't there, they were saying about like 500?
Was it 500? I think it was
and
a
then
lot.
like they only captured or killed like 75. So there's like 400 that's what these guys are all went to have a landing to try and find.
Yeah, so that's a lot. That's a pretty severe infiltration.
Yeah.
Especially because they can just hide. Apparently these vents that they're hiding in and airways aren't big enough to hide that many people.
Yeah.
But a vermonster stumbles upon him. He's tortured quite brutally by both the Aurorans and Cavendish, it seems. Just because they're trying to be like, who else knows we're here? Or like, how did you find us? And he was just going about his thing.
She comes off as like, you know, she's an etherealist too, and like it seems like her madness thing is like she's mega polite, and she does not like when people are not polite, and so we've seen examples where she freaks out if they're not polite. But she totally comes off as one of those people who like you meet her and she's all nice and friendly and polite, but then like you get her into the back room where she really shows her true colors, and she's like super evil and like the things like immensely torturing someone, and she's just like, whatever, let's do this.
Yeah, that's crazy. They kill the guy, but before they kill him though, Cavendish orders them to set him up the ropes. We don't know what that means yet, but the Syriaco's kind of like,
it seems like it's a huge punishment.
I wouldn't do that to anyone. And then Major Aspero's like, fine, kill him first, then send him up the ropes.
Yeah.
And even then he's like, it's like barely better. So we don't know what this means, but apparently it's very bad.
Yeah.
And then we're jump back to roll. And we meet the other clan of cats. And it's another kind of suspicious meeting, mainly because when they're taken to see the clan chief or king, his name is Neen, and we're kind of on Roll's perspective, or are we?
I think we were, yeah.
Yeah, and he notes that he can see kittens, and apparently when all cats normally don't let any outsider even like see their kittens, and they're usually like hidden somewhere. And so he knows that they're all gathered here together. They're all scared. And basically they end up refusing to help with anything. But they say Neen tells his people to show Roll and Bridget and Folly to the ropes. So we're like, are we going to figure out what the ropes are?
Yeah.
Sooner than later. And it turns out that the ropes is like a huge silk weaver den. Silk weavers are like these.
They're surface creatures.
They're surface creatures, and the silk they use is like ether resistant, and I think it's in fact what they use to. It's like parts of ships that they use.
Right, and that's also armor. What like Esterbrook had. They had silk woven into his armor, and that's why in the beginning of the book Gwen had to aim for his head and not his like chest, because he had this silk in his clothes. I thought they meant silk, like we have silk when we first started this book, but no, silk comes out of these
like weird
giant bugs,
spider type things.
Yeah.
And they run into a den. Luckily, or maybe not so unluckily, none of the adult silk weavers are there. It's just like hundreds and hundreds of baby ones.
Yeah.
And they get swarmed. If any of you played Helldivers,
it's like that.
It's like that. They just got totally swarmed. They have to run. Folly kind of shows her power too. It's pretty cool because they're running, they're going crazy. She finds like some sort of...
Because they run back, but she finds some other opening that they crawl through, and then it's like...
It's like narrow,
she tries to bottle cap them.
Also has like some sort of conduit to something. I don't remember what it was called, but I don't remember what she called it. But she's able to tap into that. She throws all her crystals and then sends power through them and then creates like this huge wave of lightning that vaporizes all of the baby silk weavers. And you're kind of like, don't mess with Folly.
Seriously, I didn't know she was capable of something like that. And I was like, dang. We should mention why the silk weavers are so dangerous and also coveted, is because they do have that like silk that the people want, but like they are also quite poisonous.
Yes. So we I don't know if we find out now, but we find out next we can talk about it now. The creature earlier that attacked Grimm was a Silkweaver. And when it bit him, that's the Silkweaver poison was what almost killed him. So
Yes.
nasty.
That's why they're so dangerous. And like these babies were small enough that Bridget was even able to like stomp on it with her boot and kill one.
Yeah.
But the adults are quite a bit bigger.
Yes, they are quite a bit bigger. Which we're about to see.
Yes.
Because we go back to the inn. Right,
Yeah, because I loved this part because it was like such a good like segue because at least I thought I love this kind of stuff because you're just like, oh, what's going to happen? But I can't remember if it was Bridget or Folly who mentioned it, but they were like, these are all babies. Where's the mother? And then they go back to the next chapter.
To the next chapter and you're like, where? Yeah. And then it's Ferris and you're like, is it there?
Yeah.
Which, yes, it is.
Yes. Which I think this part is funny because so Ferris, Benedict, and Gwen are at the inn's like bar drinking area, and like
Ferris is
getting sloppy, freaking
he's
drunk,
like wasted. He's like leading the whole inn in like drunken songs, and he's like Benedict and Gwen have to keep alternating on who gets him more drinks.
Yeah. But like this whole thing is because he like wants to change his mind so that another etherealist can't sense him or whatever.
Yeah.
And apparently you got to get stinky, freak drunk in order to do that.
Yes. And then in a way, Gwen gets saved by the bell. Because during all this, the man whom she stole the rooms for shows up. And he's like this big, burly, aggressive dude that apparently he went down to the surface for something. And he has like a bunch of wounded men that he wanted to bring back to these rooms to help him. And so he's like coming after Gwen. He's like, give me a room
I
back.
Immediately was thinking like
she tries to do her arrogant thing. And she's like, no. And he's like, I'm going to beat you up. And he like starts coming after her. And it's obvious like some crap's about to go down. But also,
yeah.
Door caves in and a freaking huge Silkweaver like starts attacking everybody.
Yes. But I want to know more about this guy. I've already forgot his name. But like he and his men spent like a week on the surface. Like, what the frick? Who are these guys? And how the heck they must? I would think they're not people you want to mess with because they can survive on the surface, and everyone is so scared of the surface.
Yeah, definitely not. But Gwen in her arrogance is like, I can do whatever I want because.
I just found his name. Commodore Horatio Pine. Commodore Pine is who they took the runes from.
Pine.
And he's from Olympia, which I'm curious about because at this point, I think when this book first came out, no one knew anything, but the second book is like the something of Olympia or whatever. So I'm like, oh, maybe this guy's in it.
Yeah, it's like an in-between the Olympian affair, which is what when Grimm is talking to Ransom, that's what they call it. They say the Olympian affair.
Oh yeah, they even mentioned that.
So I was like, I think it's going to be about like whatever happened.
That was apparently like little, like this is the next book's going to be.
So it's like in between. It's like book 2.5, 1.5.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Silkweaver is acting a lot smarter than just a wild, crazy animal. Like it intentionally seals doors, it attacks movement, and even the guy, what's his name again? Commodore something or Pine. Is like that is a normal.
Like he refers to them as beasts. Like they're just a beast. They're not intelligent.
But this one's acting hecka smart, and so we're kind of like.
So this is actually something we didn't mention, but Folly earlier was even like suspicious that the Aurorans were using creatures from the surface, and at this point I was like, oh, see, someone has the ability to like control this thing, and
this makes it seem super obvious that that's what's happening.
Yeah.
And we kind of like it's kind of just going crazy. It's super tough. Like I think a couple people hit it with gauntlets, and it just kind of shrugs it off.
Yeah.
And it just every time someone even moves, it just jumps on them and like instantly kills them. And but it's obviously like looking for someone. Like it's like looking around.
Yeah. It totally made me think of A Quiet Place. Like
oh yeah, totally.
Those alien things, just the second you make a sound, they kill you without hesitation.
Yeah, it's like mega fast too, so it's like can't do anything about it.
But Gwen really did get her butt saved in this because the Silkweaver posed a much greater threat, so they had to band together.
Yeah, even then, like they all banded together, and they're like surround it and start whacking it, and they all start whacking it with like swords, chairs, and it just is like beats them all off.
Yeah,
and like defeats the whole group of it. Even Benedict, a warrior born. And then I don't remember if it's this or another chapter, but we'll talk about it now. Then it like lunges at Gwen, but it kind of like cuts away. Like Gwen like lifts her gauntlet and then it cuts away, and so we're kind of like, maybe Gwen finally died.
Yeah.
She doesn't die, and then we cuts back to Bridget, Folly, and Roll, and they go back to the nest where all the little ones came out of, and they're kind of exploring, and we kind of get another hint of how valuable silk is, because when they go into the den, there's just silk everywhere, and Bridget was like, she had to like tell herself, she was like, don't get distracted by like the insane amount of wealth. Like, we're looking for clues.
Yeah.
Looking for hints.
Isn't that stuff like it's super sticky, right? I think they got stuck on it a couple times while fighting the babies or something.
I don't remember. I think it is sticky. But
so I wonder how they would transport it.
Especially because the big one was like sealing doors with it, and like people couldn't get out.
Yeah, so she probably would have had a really hard time transporting it anyway.
And then once they kind of get the hints, they kind of see that they're like, where are all the big ones? So they see like all the holes where all the bigger ones are supposed to be. So we know that there's more than one big one, but there's one big one currently attacking the inn. So it's kind of like,
it makes it definitely seem like that's the one that was,
like, where are all the other big ones? Because they saw like a bunch of like holes or something where a bunch of bigger ones could live in.
Right.
39, we get the conclusion of this current action sequence.
Yes, and the episode.
We cut to Grimm, and one of Grimm's men was at the inn but wasn't inside when the Silkweaver attacked. He was kind of just around and heard that there was trouble, and so Grimm assembles a bunch of men. They run to the inn, and you have a bump in with Cavendish, Lady Cavendish, and luckily for Grimm, he's super polite because he bumps into Cavendish.
He also has like, I think he even had the thought, like, he knew like to be polite this woman else is gonna be, whereas like he has insanely good instincts.
Yeah. So luckily, I think that saves his life because he bumps into her and knocks her down, and she like seems like really pissed about it. But he's like super over the top polite and like super correct in everything. Absolutely. And then she like loves it. She like eats it up and then, like in a weird creepy way. Like it's obvious that this lady is like.
Yes.
So they're kind of talking as they're both at the inn. Cavendish and her weird warrior-born guy, Grimm and his men. They're both outside the inn at this point, and there's a couple of guardsmen there that are kind of like, we're trying to get in, but like there's screaming going on, and then Grimm has to take over. He's kind of like,
yeah, because they were like making excuses and like, oh, we have to wait for this or that, and we got to do this, and they just weren't like actually doing anything to get in there and help out.
Luckily, he comes over. He hands him a big old axe. They chop down the door. And we find out what happened to Gwen is, as the thing was charging her, she got up her gauntlet and nailed it, and just in the right spot to kill it, but then it landed on top of her.
But
so
it was
she's
still like moving. So
yeah, so she's injured, but the Silkweaver's dead. Benedict's fine. Ferris is fine.
Grimm has his first run with Cavendish.
Yeah, we kind of have the first run with Cavendish, and then
her the warrior-born was Sark. I was trying to remember his name, and I got it written here. Sark.
Now we're kind of at this point where it's like Gwen's okay. Roll and them seem okay. They're coming back, and they're kind of seems like we had this like brief moment of action, and we're gonna come back. Everyone's gonna group back together and see what's going on, and that's kind of where we're at. We're gonna see what happens next.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. Again, overall impression of the book is it was very fast paced. A lot of things happen, like, and there's a lot of flickering between, like, a lot of really short chapters. Like, some chapters were only a few pages, and then it would jump to the next perspective. And so,
yeah, we seem to jump. We got like 4 people we jump between or something like that. 4 perspectives.
Yeah, but so far he's been tying it together pretty well. Like, it hasn't felt like hard to follow, and it's
not jerky or anything.
It's felt fast paced, but definitely not like bad. Yeah, still liking the book, going through it. And
my final thought is, let's finish this up.
All right. Thanks for joining us again. So we'll see you next week.
Next week we'll be finishing up the Aeronauts Windlass. Be sure to join us for the
concluding
most likely
episode.
Exciting conclusion. Thanks for joining. We'll see y'all later.
See ya. It's over.